Okay.
Leading.
Okay.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. We will now proceed with our second panel discussion titled Navigating the Future of Maritime Sustainability. And I'm honored to moderate this session, and we have a stellar lineup of panelists, including Kim Diederichsen, CEO of Anemoi Marine Technologies, Philippos Hadjisoteriou, Client Relations and Business Development Manager for Cyprus at Lloyd's Register, Jesper Nielsen, Responsibility Director at Monjasa, Dinos Milios, as of yesterday, Ship Partner at Cyprus at Ship Finance Solutions, and Dieter Rohdenburg, Managing Director of Intership Navigation. So we discussed earlier about the increasing regulatory pressures and the environmental challenges, and the shipping sector is actively exploring innovative solutions on how to achieve the sustainability. I would like to start with Jesper. And fuel availability is a major concern for ship owners transitioning to the greener fuels. So how can the fuel supply chain address these challenges? And do you foresee any changes in the fuel pricing models as greener fuels become more prevalent?
Thank you, Anna, and thank you for having me. That's a very open-ended question, Anna. And being a fuel provider is a unique position in this shipping value chain, right? Because we get to talk to all of the decarbonization teams across our 1,000+ customers, and then conversely, we can turn around and talk to the developers of these green fuel technologies of tomorrow. So we're very close to, we have our ears very close to the railroad tracks in sense of what's going on and where are we heading and at what pace are we traveling. I'd say a year or so, I was a little more optimistic, right? There was a surge in enthusiasm throughout the entire industry, and it just seems that it's fading a little right now as we are waiting for extra regulation to kick in, establishing this level playing field that we so much require. We've seen, of course, liner companies leading the way. They have it more easy than bulk and tramp operators, of course. They know their schedule. They can plan around with more sophisticated fuel times. They know when and where their vessels are going to be. They can plan around. But for most of the industry, right, it's the same triad of key issues that we're seeing. There's still a wide cost gap that has not been dealt with yet. And it's causing this widespread apathy across the industry. Secondly, there's no sanctions for non-compliance in place, right? So it's still very much on a voluntary basis while we're all just waiting to see what's going to happen. Of course, we're looking at MEPC 82 taking place these days in London, seeing what comes out of that as they are negotiating pricing mechanisms to kick in. And then thirdly, for a ship owner looking to acquire a vessel tomorrow, there's just no easy long-term solution out there that's ready for the picking, right? So we're looking at London, right? But we all know that nothing groundbreaking is coming out of London this week. We're all waiting for what comes out of the next meeting at the spring of 2025 and the fall of 2025 before the timeline dictates that there will be any kind of progress on the midterm measures. So it's a long wait for the entire industry, and so we're feeling it, and we're seeing it in the numbers channeled through our ERP system, right? That not much is taking place right now, other than planning, training people, and getting the knowledge up to speed. But that's about it for now.
Mm-hmm. So you see this non-alignment of the regulations across regions is really not helping and assisting it's not guiding people to
Absolutely.
follow a road.
Monjasa has been partner, and still is, to the biggest green ammonia production facility in Europe. But what our partners developing that project is looking into is immature market, right? There's no tangible demand yet, because there's no demand driving the customer base. And so, of course, a green ammonia developer cannot go to the bank with an anticipation of how the market may look like in 7 years. So, and then couple that with incomplete regulation and political frameworks that are unstable as well. Who dares pushing this multi-billion-dollar investment? No one really does, and that's what we're seeing right now. And we're seeing projects being cancelled and postponed.
Exactly. And Philip, following Jesper's points about availability, what are the key challenges in adopting LNG or LPG or other fuels, transition fuels, or other alternative fuels, particularly regarding safety and regulatory compliance?
Thank you. That's a good question. I suppose we can separate the two. LNG is already an established value chain. We have seen, and it's, dare I say, growing exponentially. The order book is up, and the order book is up for LNG gas-fueled ships, not just carriers. The bunkering supply chain is well established, even though it needs some growth. We expect over the next 10 to 20 years, 30 to 40 LNG bunkering vessels to be added to the supply chain. Probably something to note is that shift from, we've seen recently, actually, Maersk talk about leaving the methanol path and moving to the LNG path. I mean, this is a massive shift. We've got other liner carriers already taking deliveries of new builds, which are fueled by LNG. MSC, CMA, CGM are taking deliveries today. This is, this is unprecedented. So, we've been talking about this for a long time, about LNG being a transition fuel, and now we're seeing it. So, from a regulatory perspective, I would say it's already a hurdle that has been overcome since we're seeing new builds being delivered. For the existing fleet, it's a bit of a different story because you've got a huge capex that you need to justify. So what we're trying to do in Lloyd's Register and working with our partners is to have a look at the fleet and do a techno-economical study to see whether the assets are in their life cycle, whether it's justifiable to spend the investment to convert, and how long will that vessel be able to trade, given that we do know that there are issues with burning LNG into the future with methane slip, etc., which are all challenges that are being worked on. So LPG is slightly more interesting, I'd say, because it's experiencing a rise, especially in interest. There are more MGCs and more very large gas carriers being built. My colleague mentioned it in the video as well, and this is one of the drivers, is the Japanese government's plan to decarbonize by co-firing their coal plants with ammonia. And since the smaller LPG carriers can carry ammonia, that might be something to sort of nudge in the right direction. And it is similar to LNG a few years ago. You have a chicken and egg situation. This is where all the stakeholders need to come in and share the risk so that you can kickstart that value chain, just as was happened with LNG. LPG has a positive future. It's got a good well-to-wake carbon factor. There does need to be a pickup for the LPG bunkering, because currently if you were to try to bunker with LPG, you could face operational difficulties in the terminals. And then if you start adding the concept of dropping in bio-LNG and bio-LPG, these two fuels have a very, very good future in the short term, let's say. in order to drop the CII quite massively. Even just 5–10% of addition of bio-LNG could give you an even higher return in your CII.
An extra plus is that availability is already there. I mean, the volumes are already there. But do you think it will still be more commodity-driven, this kind of fuels?
Yes, I do. I mean, at the end of the day, we are trying to support from a technological perspective, and more we've been getting involved in looking at the business side of it, as like being able to justify these investments. So we have come out with projections for where we think the fuel might be price-wise, and what the savings would be, and how that maps out on a fleet, so that you can basically use your investments wisely and de-risk that.
Mm-hmm. So talking about these economic and finance challenges, Dino, from your experience in the ship finance sector, what do you see as the critical issues ship owners face in managing their fleet's environmental footprint? And what are the key financing implications for such investment decisions?
Thank you, Ada, and good afternoon, everyone. Indeed, ship owners are facing a very difficult decision-making process, and they have to solve a very complex equation right now. On the investment side, the market is very fragmented amongst several different options. Should they go for an upgrade of the existing vessels, aim for new buildings, perhaps a combination of the two, which makes sense, I mean, in the current regulatory framework. And if they go for new buildings, should they aim for real long-term solutions, or maybe more conservative intermediate options and more conventional fuel options, basically? It's also an issue of if they proceed to make an investment of either type, what is the financial performance they should expect? What's the payback out of this investment? And how can they convince their financiers, of course, to fund it? And another issue that practically affects decisions by owners is that, according to the market conditions, if they're in a solid market, which we more or less are now, maybe the negative effects of a wrong decision or a less optimal one will not be that catastrophic. So, but if, or rather when, markets become a bit more challenging, the impact of all the decisions taken in previous years may differentiate the viable and profitable players from perhaps some who will not be any longer. On the financing side, sourcing the right type of financing is, of course, a very critical matter. And the decision-making criteria for a ship owner are not only the cost of funding among different options, but also the flexibility of this financing which is provided, the long-term commitment of the financier to the shipping sector, which make a lot of difference if there are big changes or downswings in the market, etc. And the relative weight placed by financiers in the decarbonization criteria versus pure credit criteria. So in this respect, there's a non-linear relationship between the direction that investments are going and the criteria of financiers who are supposed to finance them. So it's the biggest challenge.
From the financiers' perspective then, how do they see about financing green investments while managing all these risks of untested technologies, unproven yet, and the regulatory changes as well?
That's a very good question. As regards green investments, and by green investments, I would focus on retrofits, rotor sales, which Kim presented earlier, a very interesting topic, carbon capture technologies, and perhaps dual fuel conversions, if it's technically feasible in a ship. Financiers at this stage, because they're not able to quantify the impact on profitability of a vessel out of this investment, the cash flow generation, they would simply refrain from them, I would say with very few exceptions, and say that this issue is a matter of the ship owner to pay from own liquidity. Of course, well, there are the Poseidon principles, which nudge towards a decarbonization direction by encouraging ship owners to report and gradually improve their environmental footprint. What is becoming increasingly common, which does not solve it, does not address the issue of green lending, but it's sustainability-linked financing. Because banks are definitely not leading the way. They're not driving decarbonization, just following the developments. This is the reality at present. So in an attempt to adapt to the new framework and improve their own indicators, they would touch upon all three letters of the ESG acronym and set some sustainability-linked KPIs, key performance indicators. So they would offer a pricing advantage, effectively a lower interest margin, to ship owners who satisfy a gradual decrease in carbon emissions and emissions in general, and who also satisfy certain criteria as regards their governance structure,
ESG.
diversity, equal opportunities, and social contribution. So this is as far as the market effectively goes at present.
Not really assisting, I guess, the ship owners. Kim, while financing is a key enabler, and you already have data now with the retro sales, how do ship owners calculate their return on investment in wind propulsion compared to other energy-efficient technologies?
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, it's not a simple question, but let me try to give some examples on how to look at it. When our clients are doing an NPV calculation of the potential investment, a lot of factors will go into it. One thing is the capital expenditure for the hardware. Then there's, of course, the physical installation and the maintenance of the system as of such. The way we look at it and the way we see it is the number of, in our case, rotor sails to be installed also depends on the ship type, where the ship is sailing, the number of days it's sailing, and the configuration in general. All goes into one big pot. And that will give you a number. Very often we see just assessing the pure savings, only addressing the fuel and emission savings, we see a sub-5-year typical ROI. But in some cases, it's much lower. And the reason being are some of the elements that I showed you a little bit earlier, the impact in trading EU, fuel EU rewards. It is the CII impact. It can be improved also by voyage optimization, weather routing. And then, of course, there's a whole element which is not yet determined, or at least to be verified going forward. That is, what is the impact of the residual value of a vessel installed with wind propulsion? So when you're in a typical S&P process, how much more will the vessel value increase over the alternatives? All that goes into the decision-making process.
So let's say if you are going to give us 2 or 3 metrics on which they should count on doing the investment.
Yes.
One is the increase in value, added value, let's say.
Definitely. And I do think what we're seeing as a driver today is the impact, the operational impact, the CII impact. That is the reasons why they're coming here to us today. So it's not only about the monetary saving the fuel, the money on the fuels itself. Yes. It's a combination.
Great, thank you. And Dieter, in light of the energy efficiency and the onboard carbon capture now is gaining traction, how close are we to the widespread adoption of these systems? And what are the major barriers, particularly in terms of retrofitting the older fleet?
Yeah. I would like, before I make a comment, or when I answer this, I would like to make a couple of comments on Jesper's thought of or hope that the MEPC next year will give us some clarity. I'm not so sure that we will see clarity on what types of fuels we will be using in the future. So it's going to be, yes, we will have market-based measures. We will have some sort of additional cost to the fuels we use, depending on the carbon intensity. but we will not have clarity on what will be the future. So in terms of answering the question, what kind of infrastructure a fuel supplier should be investing in, the chicken and egg issue, I don't think we will see clarity. And it concerns me a bit because the longer the ship owners, the longer the bunker suppliers, the fuel suppliers are without clarity, the longer the ship owners are without clarity as well. And then this financing becomes an issue as well, because if we don't know what to build, what to install, it is an issue. So I'm not sure that we will actually see clarity next year. The carbon capture system, I think I mentioned this during my presentation as well. I don't think this is a silver bullet. This will not be for everybody because of the downside of the weights that you have, because of infrastructure issues, collecting the CO2. So you have to, it has to go ashore, even though this is a containerized system that, maybe it's easier to put the container on shore and then deal with it. So it's not liquid CO2 that you would need to handle immediately right on shore. But I don't think it is the silver bullet. Having said this, I think there is a good market case for this. Certainly there where you have already now savings from emission trading schemes, where like in the EU, where you will benefit from not having to buy certificates. So I think in a relatively localized market, we will see some uptake once these systems are actually available in the market. And I think they come relatively quickly. This is a relatively simple system, if you want. It's as I explained to it. I mean, I explained it. It's a containerized system, which is relatively easy to install. And by the way, I didn't mention the cost of it. We expect when this is able to collect 90 to 95% of the CO2, it will cost around $2.5 million to install, and so it's relatively inexpensive compared to the savings you get as well.
So it's an important investment, and if it reduces the fuel, and do you see this alongside other technologies like wind propulsion or alternative fuels?
I mean, wind, funny you ask this, because our new building design actually has both carbon capture and the wind propulsion. I think it's a bit of an overkill, because if you capture 90% of the carbon, you don't really need to deal with fuel reduction. But it makes, of course, sense to use a fuel that then you can capture the carbon off again and then reproduce that fuel to run the engine on it. So what I was saying about the blue methanol, I think that was probably the business case.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So, Kim, do you think that what is your opinion with wind propulsion running along other technologies like the carbon capture systems, and also using alternative fuels as well? I mean, do you see this innovation complementing each other?
Let's address the fuels here. We very much welcome the transition into whatever fuel that might be going forward, green. It comes with a limited availability. It comes with a price tag. Wind is here. Wind is free once it's installed. We are seeing ships now. So we're doing both, and from our perspective at least, both retrofit and new build projects. For the new builds, we are seeing optimized designs. We see new vessel designs basically using the wind propulsion as not the primary, but an integrated permanent source going forward. So it's not only to be considered a transitional solution, at least from my perspective. I would say looking at it goes very, very well in hand with other technologies. Some technologies it might not work that well with, reason being that they may, as our system, because inside a rotor sail there's actually a motor, there's a drive system, we spin it around. So you use a small amount of energy to create a lot of savings. But if the load is not available, so if the load on the auxiliary engines is too high, if you need to kick another one in, the business case may not fly. We also see vessel segments where what we're doing may not be that advanced, that ready. I mean, we're focusing on bulkers and tankers as we speak. Really, the larger ones, and we're rolling out. Containers is not an area that we're focusing on today, so I think you have to look at it, depending on what type of vessel, the trade, and many other things. Yes, it can very well go hand in hand.
Okay. And being cautious of the time here as well, let's do a last round of questions. Jesper, in your view, which alternative fuels show the most promise for widespread adoption, and what factors do you think it will drive their success in the coming years?
I don't think there's going to be one prevailing technology here. I think instead what we need to get our arms around is that we're looking into a multi-fuel future instead. And not only across companies, but also within companies or ship owners. I think that across their fleet, they may have, depending on the parameters, the trading pattern, the size, geography, I think that even one ship owner will need to have 2 or 3 technologies within the fleet in a not too distant future. So of course, for a bunker company such as Monjasa, this is also a big transitional change, right? From having been black belts in 1 or 2 fossil fuel technologies, now suddenly the same group of commercial teams now need to understand hydrogen technologies to a much greater extent, and then spread that across brown, gray, blue, and green subcategories. Right? It's a huge challenge for a learning organization. So we've been seeing and reading a lot about methanol for the past couple of years, but as Philip rightfully mentions, right, we're seeing, especially just the last couple of months, we're seeing an order book tipping in favor of LNG, which was the technology non grata just 1 or 2 years ago because of the methane slip issue that is now being dealt with. But because of the shipping markets under pressure, the delay in regulatory level playing field, we're seeing ship owners now discovering that actually LNG could bring you to 2035 and beyond for fuel EU and IMO compliance. So we're seeing a lot of ship owners, of course, choosing that button for the vessel that is being ordered for tomorrow. Yeah. But of course, we're also curious about, I think, the presentations that we've seen today from Kim and from Dieter. It makes a world of sense incorporating these second-tier technologies as well, of course. It all needs to come into the mix.
Yes, it will be an energy mix of both fuels and technologies, yes. Dinos, if a shipping group wanted to raise debt for green new buildings or even green upgrades to its fleet, what financing solutions are currently available in the market, if there are any?
We can talk about this later. No, the 2 issues, the 2 main issues faced here is, one has to do with new buildings. To put it in rough figures, assuming a new building vessel, a greener new building vessel, would cost up to, I don't know, 5 million more to build compared to a conventional one. This would translate roughly to $2,000 to $3,000 a day in debt service outflows if this was debt financed, debt funded. So the cost is known, the cash outflows are known. What is not known and cannot be quantified at present is the revenue side, if it will cover this additional cost. And as regards retrofits, on the other hand, assuming that they could be used as collateral, in practice this is impossible or impractical, because as soon as a piece of equipment is installed on a ship, it's very difficult to remove it. Don't know if this makes any sense at all. So what should a ship owner do at this stage? From a short-term viewpoint, as things stand today, one solution is to fix a vessel on a longer-term charter with a credible counterparty. So if the revenue side is covered and it's fixed for a visible period of time, this removes the uncertainty of, on the cash inflow side. Another advantage which larger groups have. I'm talking about groups with a corporate holding structure, is recourse to the cash flows of the group's fleet as a whole through a corporate guarantee by holding company. This would create the necessary comfort by a lender to mitigate for the risks of a greener assets and riskier assets in their perspective. Now, looking a bit in the medium term, I wouldn't say long term, the key role in the equation is that of the charterers. Because as charterers start to see the negative impact of less green vessels, which they have under employment, maybe they can quantify in a more standardized way the premium they will give to ship owners for greener ones. Now, if this is sort of standardized, if this incremental effect of green components in a ship, green technologies, can be quantified in a way that it can be understood and assessed by financiers, this could solve the reluctance to go greener. But this greenification is, we could say that it's one of the factors that's pushing for more corporatization and possibly even consolidation of the industry in the longer term.
Okay. So, shall I sum up and saying that there are no clear financing solutions at the moment? It has to be.
I have an idea. You just ask him to pre-finance the system before you, and then you pay as you save.
Pay as you save is of course where we're going one day.
It could be.
Be assured of that. But there is some technicalities. We're not there yet. It will require a lot of data to reach that point, and there might also be other obstructions. We need to make sure that the vessel is sailing, and many hundred other things. But this is definitely where we are aiming towards, if that's the question. Yeah. Maybe from our side also addressing, I would have to say, we've had different models. We've proposed also financing of it, but it really hasn't been, that is not the main obstruction for rolling it out. I'll have to say from our perspective, whether it's because the owners are cash rich or whatever it's happened, that's not the main reason. I think it has to make sense to install it on the ship, technically, operationally, and of course financially as well. So again, it's a combination. When it makes sense, then we see the uptake. It has to make technical operational sense as well.
So looking beyond 2030, do you see wind propulsion becoming a core part of the industry's decarbonization strategy?
I hope so. And you see some initiatives are already being taken now in FuelEU with the reward factor of wind, and all that is happening already now. So yes, it looks like we're going back to where we came from 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And Philip, with so many emerging fuel options around, how is classification societies like Lloyd supporting compliance with future emission standards while adopting the greener technologies?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think as well, based on what I've been hearing from my fellow panelists, you know, we're in a transitional period, and we have to remember that that's always an uncomfortable place to be in. And I'm sure most people have experienced transition in their lives in some form or another, whether it's private or whether it's in their workspace. But it is a difficult time, and what we're trying to do is trying to support the decision-making process. And obviously, it has to make financial sense, but we do need to engineer our way out of this problem. And companies like Anemoi are coming up with these very unique concepts, which we are part of that process of testing, certifying, and installing on board vessels. So what we're doing is qualitative and quantitative risk assessments for new fuels, new technologies, examining the hazards, and essentially coming forward, because there are no, I mean, not that there are no regulations, but there are very limited regulations, especially with the new fuels. So we're taking a risk-based certification approach using hazards and HAZOPs. We're looking at carbon capture. My colleague mentioned in his presentation, we strongly believe that that is a key part and a solution for closing what we call the carbon cycle, being able to take transition fuels and make them last longer so that you can justify that investment, even though you're still burning carbon. Testing alternative fuels, I mean, that's another thing that we've been involved in, looking at trials for biofuel, drop-in biofuels, assessments of IMO and decarbonization instruments for the fleet, whether that's looking at fleet CIIs and well-to-wake for CO2 emissions, and doing this analysis where you're looking at the fleet as a whole and trying to decide which are the best options for owners or managers to make. And of course, last but not least, I would say one of the important things is to be involved in a collaboration with owners, yards, and the IMO in shaping the future of the regulatory landscape. That's a key part that class societies are playing right now.
The need for global regulations is quite needed.
Yeah.
And ending with Dieter, so do you think that the carbon capture could become more of a strategy, or you see it as a transitional solution along with alternative fuels? And if you can also share from, as a manager's point of view as well, and owners, what's your, at the moment, actions you take towards the energy efficiencies and sustainability?
I think carbon capture systems will become a solution, a widespread solution on shore. I think there's many industries that will be implementing this going forward. I think shore-based installations will be a lot more than ship-based installations. Even though I agree with the rest of the team here that it's going to be a bouquet of different solutions. The fuels, technological solutions, carbon capture will be one of them. And there's no reason why it should be also only an intermediate one, unless Monjasa decides not to supply any carbon fuels anymore, then of course that becomes extinct. No, I think it is there for the long term, but again, it's going to be more land-based than ship-based. Now, when it comes to our services that we provide to ship owners as ship managers, well, there is a number. To a certain extent, it's a bit like what Philippos was just saying about the classification societies. We are there to provide intelligence, consultancy services to our ship owners. We work with others in the industry to provide these services as well. We encourage them to do certain things on the operational level. As I was saying, I think this is that's the thing we need to be doing now, operational efficiencies. We also work with our commercial partners, so shipping pools and also charterers to try to improve voyage planning, to do to improve the commercial side, the operational side. And we make suggestions when it comes to the technical retrofits that can be done. One of our bigger clients, I have to say now, the Hartmann Group, we're just together with them. We are doing a lot of retrofits during dry docking and installing energy efficiency equipment. So yeah, we are there to help them, guide them, and consult them as well on decarbonization.
And there is also investment on digitalization and optimization of.
I think digitalization obviously is one part. I mean, without wanting to go into the benefits of big data and what the discussion that we had earlier today already, I think there's a lot that can be done with further digitalization to improve the operational efficiencies of shipping, and we are way behind other industries when it comes to this. So there's a lot that should and can be done. However, it's not so much depending on the ship owner or ship manager nowadays. We do a lot. I mean, what we do on board of the ships it's the interconnection with shore-based service providers, shore-based authorities, and so on, where we're lacking the support from the shore-based industry.
Yes. We're lacking, I think, also strong pricing incentives and strong regulations across the regions.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing your expertise. And do we have any questions from our audience?
Hungry.
Covered everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you.